Like other indicators that are based on a certain time range, ADX is often left with default values at 14 to have a good balance between short and long-term context. Again, values of the ADX are a good benchmark, such as 20 or 25, but also pay attention to how steep or flat it has been developing. Right here, values are quite low, well under 20. However, a gradually steepening incline has been developing. It's been especially noticeable with the ADX starting about mid-May. And that's also about the time when price began a more noticeable and stable uptrend out of the horizontal range of the past few weeks. Thus, the ADX has done its job and given us an indication of directional movement, in this case for a moderate uptrend, where the strongest parts of the incline actually weren't at 20, they were just below it. And even though values were above 20 for some time, that's also when the trend began to move towards more bullish to neutral, to neutral, to neutral to bearish. And unsurprisingly, when ADX values began to sharply decline, there was a shift towards a well-defined non-directional range, which is actually quite wide given the increased volatility with price. Now there's another sharp increase in ADX, and that's also when there's more directional movement. In this case, it's towards a downtrend. It is certainly well developed once values reach over 20, but ADX was also quite steep well before reaching 20, and that's also when there was a sharp directional movement in price when the downtrend initially began to accelerate. It's a good demonstration of why observing those thresholds around 20 to 25 can be important, but also pay attention to how steep the ADX has been declining or inclining and flattening. See, even before ADX values returned back under 20, it was quite flat and had no significant sharp angles for any extended time, which summarized the transition towards more range-bound, non-directional movement that was in line with how price began to stay more horizontal during the shift towards more neutral to bearish movement, which is quite the opposite. Of course, there's a steep directional movement in price, in this case downwards. The ADX gives an indication of the transition towards more directional movement once it begins to rise sharply. In particular, once it begins to surge well above the threshold in the mid to low 20 range. Though near the beginning of the downtrend acceleration, there was also a noticeable steep incline with the ADX just before it began to reach over 20.